Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Marilyn Hottle, and I am the founder and a broker associate at Coldwell Banker Camelot Realty. I want to be one of the first to welcome you as a member to the Realtors Association of Lake and Sumter County. This is a great association. I started my real estate career, about 33 years ago. I always remember that because my daughter was a year old. But I started in Pennsylvania. We moved to Florida in 1986, and I resumed my career here and, of course, joined the local association. I've had a little experience with associations, so let me assure you, you have joined a great association. There's a lot of interaction. You get to know people that you'll be working with, and that's always beneficial. When you have a cooperative transaction and you know a little bit about the person you're working with, it helps a lot if you could just call and get it worked out. Anyway, we're here today to talk about some exciting stuff. We're going to start off with antitrust. Antitrust is like the four-letter word in real estate. Antitrust is governed by the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. The FTC, I had one personal experience with them that I'll share, but the FTC are not friendly people. They make the IRS look friendly. With antitrust, we have to think first of all about our industry as a whole. Let's think about it. If everybody in this room were to leave after this meeting and there was a for sale by owner up the street, we could all try to procure that listing, right? But what happens when one of us gets the listing? Do the rest of us just go away, melt into the woodwork? No, we don't. We now try to find a buyer for that listing. So we go from competitive, when we were trying to get the listing, to cooperative, now that someone has a listing agreement. That's what other business can you think of that works that way? Along with that comes some issues that we deal with under antitrust. The whole idea of antitrust by the FTC is to keep our business pro-competitive. That word will come up several times when we're talking about the FTC. One of the things we're going to talk about is price fixing. The first thing we're going to talk about, price fixing. Can any of you guess what price fixing might be referring to? I'm sure somebody has spoken up and said commission. Yes, commission is one of the first things we think about. What happens with your company policy is your broker sits down and he figures out his overhead, his agent splits, he puts in a percentage for profit. Most brokers are not nonprofit association, much like their associates. And with that, he comes up with what will be the company policy for commission. Where we get in trouble is if 4 or 5 brokers get together and they charge X percent, Y percent, and Z percent, and they say, you know what, if we all charged Y percent, that would make life a lot easier for all of us when it comes to commission. That would certainly be a violation of antitrust and price fixing, because we know antitrust is all about being pro-competitive. One thing we don't necessarily think about under price fixing is term of the listing. Some of you may have a company policy for a 3-month listing or 6-month listing or a year listing, but if again brokers get together and decide let's all take 6-month listings, and that way we won't have any issues to deal with, again that would be a violation of antitrust under price fixing. Okay, let's next talk about monopoly. There's another one. I'm sure some of you sitting here today are with franchises, Century 21, Coldwell Banker, ERA, Sotheby's, or the Better Homes and Gardens name. Those are all owned by one parent company called Realogy. So that would beg the question, why doesn't Realogy as the parent company combine us all into one and call us Realogy Realty, other than the name sucks? The reason is because nationwide, I believe it's 40-some% of associates are part of those franchises, and that would be construed as a monopoly. So therefore, each franchise is kept separate with their own services, products, etc. So that's how monopoly, and again being pro-competitive, comes into the business. The next one we're going to talk about is conspiracy and boycotting. Conspiracy and boycotting kind of go together. Let's take an example here. Let's say we're all sitting here today, and at the break we get chatting, and what do we always chat about? We always chat about real estate. Well, let's say somebody says, did anybody see that article in the local newspaper this morning? What it says is, save thousands. You don't need a realtor. Be a for sale by owner. We have a website for sale by owners, and we'll put your home on there and you can save a lot of money. So I speak up and I say, you know what? I spend $10,000 a year advertising with that local newspaper. Another broker says I do the same, and 3 or 4 more join in. And pretty soon we all say, you know what? They're not running anything positive about our industry. We're spending all this money. Why don't we all take our money back? And then maybe they'll get a whole new attitude, right? We would definitely be in violation of conspiracy and boycotting, because again, as a group, we have decided to take a stand. Now, can an individual broker decide he's not happy with the service being offered? Of course he can. He can withdraw his money and spend it in another phase of his business. But boycotting and monopoly would be together on that one. I'm sure in your packet you all either have this little booklet or you have a copy of it. In here is a lot more about antitrust. Antitrust is something that we all need to be aware of. We need to be aware of red flags when they come up. And if anything comes to mind, go directly to your broker and discuss it with them. This is taken to the point where even if you're in a meeting with a bunch of realtors and something comes up in the discussion that you feel is a red flag, perhaps it may be price fixing, it is your duty to raise your hand and say, I think this is an inappropriate discussion for this group. If the discussion continues, you need to stand up and say, please mark it in the minutes that I'm leaving this meeting. Because even if you just sit and listen without making comments, you would be in violation. So it's something to keep in mind, antitrust. I told you I had one personal experience with the FTC. It happened many years ago, and I had a call one afternoon, and this gentleman introduced himself and said he was with the FTC, and it took a minute to click. And he said, there has been a complaint filed against you, and I need to come into your office. He said, I'll be there at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And I said, okay, that's fine. Can I ask what this is in reference to? And he said, we'll talk about it when I get there. So I slept really well that night. So the next morning he got there, and as I said, these are not friendly people. He would not even take a cup of coffee. He went into a conference room and told me at that time our office had a company policy that we charged what we called a processing and compliance fee. And a customer had filed a complaint, thinking it was an unfair charge. So first of all, he wanted to look at every listing file we had in the office. At that time, we had in excess of 300 listings. So we had to bring in every listing file. Then he wanted to see all the pending files. So we drug all the pending files in so we could take a look at them. Lastly, he wanted to look at all the closed files for the past 6 months. So we literally had 4 staff people running files back and forth all day. After that, there was about 8 or 10 agents in the office. He called them into the conference room individually to speak with them. Then he said he wanted to talk to me. And what he said was, well, I don't see any violation here. He said, you disclose this fee in 3 different places throughout your listing, selling, contracts. And he said, you know, your agents are on board. They know when you charge it, why you charge it, etc. So he said, I don't see a violation. So I said, oh, well, that's good news. I said, so what happens now? And he says, what do you mean? And I says, well, do I get a letter or something? And he says, no, you just don't hear from me again. So that was my one and only experience with the FTC, hopefully my last. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to move on to ethics. Ethics, here we go. We're going to talk about, first of all, Article 3, which is the duty to cooperate. Realtors shall cooperate with other brokers except when the cooperation is not in the client's best interest. The obligation to cooperate does not include the obligation to share commissions, fees, or otherwise compensate another broker. This is surprising to some people. When you're done today and you take your oath for membership, you're going to take an oath to cooperate. But how about this part about except when cooperation is not in the client's best interest? Okay, I'm sure some of you in the room are newly licensed within the last few months, and some of you are experienced and moved here from different areas or different associations. Some of you experienced people, I'm sure you've gone on a listing appointment that's an expired listing. Okay, and are these people generally happy with the company that they were originally listed with? Not always. And you're going to hear comments like, you know, they didn't advertise it, they didn't show it, they didn't follow up, and on and on and on. And of course, this is tough. You just have to kind of sit there and nod and let them vent. But when they're all done, it's your job to say, you know, I'm really sorry you had a bad experience with that company. We work with them a lot. They're a fine organization, but obviously you've had a bad experience. So when you get halfway through your presentation, they say to you, you know, I think you can get the job done. I'm impressed with what you have, and yes, I do want to list with your company and you. But the seller says, I have one condition. I don't want anyone from that first company to set foot on my property. They can't show it, they can't do anything. So what do we do now? We have a duty to cooperate, so we try to do everything to overcome the objection. We say to them, you know, I understand you had a bad experience, but we sure don't want to lose any prospect to buy your home. How about if anyone from that office calls to show the property, how about if I personally accompany them? Would that be helpful? You try everything to overcome. And they say to you, listen, Marilyn, if you want this listing, nobody from that other company is going to be on my property. You have two choices at this point. Either walk away from the listing, or you say to them, I understand you had a bad experience. If that's how you feel, I need it in your handwriting, signed by you, and preferably in blood and notarized. It has to be their decision. Should that company ever call the office for a showing, hand it to your broker and let them handle it from there. Then there's the part about it does not include the obligation to share commissions. You know, over the years, many types of agency have developed. I would recommend to you, when you do a search for listings, make sure you look at that part where it says the co-op commission, because sometimes it will say 0. Some limited service companies literally take a flat fee to put it in MLS and they're done. Okay? So they haven't negotiated any commission for a co-op broker. A lot of times it's your job to contact the seller directly to set up the showing. I would get a commission agreement to sign before you show it by the seller. So these are things that are included. So be sure you look at that. You sure don't want to wait till you get the HUD statement and see that there's no commission on the selling side. Okay, the next article we're going to talk about is the duty not to solicit the client of another realtor. A realtor shall not engage in any practice or take any action inconsistent with the agency or other exclusive relationship recognized by law that other realtors have with clients. Can we assume if there's a listing in MLS that another broker has a listing contract? Yes, we can. We can assume that. Okay, let's use an example here. Let's say I decide I'm going to start prospecting in Park Place. And in Park Place, there's 200 homes. And I mail out 200 letters that say, my name's Marilyn, and I'm going to be specializing in Park Place, so if you have any real estate needs, feel free to call me. Of those 200 listings, or excuse me, neighbors, There's 17 that are listed with other brokers. Am I in violation of Article 16? Am I trying to solicit the client of someone I know has a contract? No, I'm not. I'm not in violation. That's considered a mass mailing. Years ago, some of you experienced people may remember we used to have to make a notation. If your home is currently listed with another broker, please disregard this notice. We don't have to do that anymore. A couple of years ago, the state did not mandate that. In this day of technology, we can show it was a mass mailing. On the other hand, if I mailed that letter to the 17 people that I knew were listed with other brokers, would I be in violation of Article 16 then? You betcha. Now I'm targeting people that I know have a contract with another broker. Okay, let's move on to Article 12. This is a good one. Realtors shall be careful at all times to present a true picture in their advertising and representations to the public. Realtors shall also ensure that their professional status, broker, appraiser, property manager, etc., or realtor is clearly identifiable in such advertising. Yeah. Advertising that is untrue or deceptive. Advertising is untrue or deceptive if it contains factual assertions that are untrue or assertions that may be true, but when taken in context lead to reasonable consumer to reach factually inaccurate conclusions, whatever that means. Okay, let's use an example there. Remember we talked about that for sale by owner that we all were trying to procure, and one of us procured it. Let's say I call that agent Mary and I say, Mary, I see you have a listing there. I'd like to set up a showing. And she says, sure. So she sets up the showing. I go show the property, and as normal procedure, I leave my business card on the kitchen counter. That day about 5 o'clock, the seller gets home, sees the card and says, oh good, the home was shown. I should be hearing from my agent soon to see how it went. She flips over my card and it says, I charge X% commission. Why pay more? Mary gets a phone call from her seller, and the seller says, Mary, why am I paying more? Okay, first of all, is a business card considered advertising? Sure. I would think we'd all agree that a business card is considered advertising. Am I in violation of presenting a true picture? I would not be in violation of this code because it is true. I always charge X% commission. Truthful advertising, even if it offends some competitors, is considered to be, there's that word again, pro-competitive, and restrictions imposed upon such advertising by trade associations will violate the antitrust laws. In other words, if you falsely accuse me, you would be in violation. Interesting stuff. Okay, it talks here a lot about participation in board meetings and stuff. And again, I would really encourage you to get involved with the association. There's a lot of committees that could pique most of your interest. If you're interested in the legal part of our business, you might consider joining the grievance committee. There's training involved in the grievance committee. You serve on the grievance committee for 3 years, and then you can move to the professional standards committee, which I happen to be chair of. So we can certainly use new, fresh members to be joining us. Like I say, it's a great organization. I've had the privilege of serving as your president 3 times and District 7 vice president for Florida Realtors. And of course, that made me a delegate for the National Association of Realtors. So get involved and find an interest that, that will add to your professional career. Okay. You are never in violation of the code if you charge a discount or flat fee commission. Never. You can engage in comparative but otherwise truthful advertising. That's where that comparative, the X% commission comes in. You can act in the capacity of a buyer's broker, transaction broker, facilitator. You can